Thank you, everybody. This is fun, and I'm excited to be able to do this in some future sessions as well. To recap who I am and why I'm here, I own a startup in town. Can you guys hear me in the back? Yeah. Good. All right. I own a startup in town. It's a small developer media company, and my background is in application development. I don't work for Google, but I've had a lot of opportunities to integrate Google Maps in various ways, and because of the being exposed to a very large community of developers which we manage, I get to see a lot of really cool things. So Saroo's story is amazing, and it almost seems insurmountable, and actually even though I already knew a lot about Google Earth, even when I heard about the story, I said this is impossible. But I think once we start digging into it, you'll see that it's actually, you can see the leaps of how he got from nothing to home very quickly using just a very simple tool that's available. What I'd like to start out with is just kind of do a quick overview of Google Earth, the technology, and talk about how it works, how it's created, how it's supported today, and what the future looks like. And then we'll have fun actually playing with Google Earth in various incarnations. Some of you have a computer in front of you, and Google Earth Pro is already open. But everything I'm going to show you, you can of course do at home, and if you see the recording on YouTube, you can take it from there as well. So the first thing, obviously, Google Earth is owned by Google. As Google has done famously forever, a lot of times they'll create these very great free, quote-unquote free products that do very amazing things. There's usually always some ulterior motive behind some of the stuff that they build, but the things that they've developed have been amazing. Google Earth is part of the Google Maps division inside of Google, which is a massive group that's responsible for anything geospatial, direction-based, etc. And Google Earth itself is actually not a primary focus of Google. What you see on these machines today is Google Earth Pro, which is now free. When they first launched it, it was paid. And also, once you play with it a little bit, it becomes pretty clear that it's not a primary focus of theirs because it doesn't match the quality of other products they have. And the reason for that is that their primary focus with all of the geographic technologies that they build is really around Google Maps, because that's where people are using it in their day-to-day lives and functional and so forth. But no matter what, Google Earth exists. It's usually used for fun or exploration or finding new places and doing new things. And then you can think of the Google Maps product as something that you use as a very functional tool to get around, usually. But there's some other use cases that I'm going to share with you. So we're going to focus on Google Earth, but I'm going to show you several versions of Google Earth, not just the one that's installed there. So let's talk about how do they make this thing. And it's Google. Google has more information than any organization, entity, anywhere ever, for the most part. Maybe not the NSA, but and that's really the power of Google Earth, because most of what is on Google Earth is not data they've produced themselves. So the technology they use to build this tool is aerial imaging, obviously. They have technology around capturing images and data at the street level, the ground level. They use image stitching technology. I'm going to go through all of these briefly. They use a lot of crowdsourced data collection, and I'll explain what that means. It's actually a very common way for big organizations to build technology anymore. And then 3D modeling. So these are all the technologies that they combine together to make this amazing tool. Starting with aerial imaging, which is interesting because I think one of the most complex parts of Google's job here is complying with all the laws, both countrywide and even geographically within countries. There's certain parts of the US that the images are obfuscated, which means they either blur them out, or now what they're doing is they're replacing them with more like general, like if it's a desert, they'll put like a general desert look and feel that matches the surroundings. So there's certain areas in the US that can't show via satellite. There's certain countries, China especially, that they can't show images via satellite. So they have to do a lot of effort, and I'm sure their legal team is constantly trying to figure out what they can and what they can't do. But the images they get go way far back, and we'll go and look at it, even to the time before satellites, where they were capturing images, it wasn't Google who was capturing it was the military who was capturing images during World War I via kites, via balloons. All of these things, all of these images have been amassed in massive repositories, and Google's gotten their hands on them. And so one of the things that Google's just doing is just collecting all the images, all the data they possibly can to make this tool stronger. So you can actually go back in time with Google Maps to see historical images, and sometimes you can see images that are clearly before modern satellite imagery, and I'm going to show you that. But the vast majority of the images, and certainly the ones that you see today, if you just log in and look at them, are satellite images. And again, Google doesn't, until recently, in the last 2 years, Google isn't actually the one capturing these images. There's a company called Digital Globe, and Google pays them millions of dollars a year to get a feed of data from these satellites. And so they subscribe to a service, and they get full access to all images coming from these satellite dishes, and they just record them. Apple does the same thing. TomTom does the same thing. There's a lot of services that just subscribe to this, and Digital Globe's entire business model is based on these huge companies subscribing to the data that comes from the satellite dishes. And so because of that, actually Google doesn't have a lot of control of the actual images that are captured. Generally, each evolution of these satellites have gotten more robust in what they capture, but usually it always focuses on largely populated or popular areas. So when Google Maps first came out, you could only see the Earth at a very high level, and then as you zoomed in, you could only see the detail on cities like San Francisco, New York, and so forth. Now that's changed dramatically. You can go in the middle of Kansas and see wheat fields, but prior to maybe 5 years ago, what you would have seen would have just been a gray square once you zoom in. So it's pretty amazing how it's changed. Google has recently acquired a company called Skybox, which is their own satellites now. So now they actually have control of the satellites, which means they can capture more data, and they'll probably launch more satellites. Now, what's interesting about the satellite technology is there's a legal limit as to how good the resolution of the image can be. And they measure it in centimeters per pixel, which seems kind of weird, but everybody's computer screen is comprised of pixels. And what they're saying is that within an individual pixel, this is the most data you can show. So for commercial uses, it's 30 centimeters. But the satellites are capable of seeing a needle on a road. They can go down to 7 centimeters per pixel, and then the government satellites can do even better. Which seems surprising, but it really isn't if you think about the fact that we have telescopes that can see galaxies millions of light years away. Well, if you turn those telescopes into the Earth, it seems very obvious that we would, just above the atmosphere, be able to see very close. So most of what you see when you use Google Earth is the satellite imagery. But another huge element to this, and actually, again, the satellite imagery is probably the least complex of everything. Another huge element is the street level capture. Has anybody ever seen the Google Capture car before? Yeah. What is that? And it's had many, many evolutions. Well, they don't just have the car. They have the car, they have bikes, they have the Trekker, which is in the upper right. Here's the bikes. They have snowmobiles for ski resorts and mapping out ski resorts and stuff like that. So Google will put a camera on anything that moves, basically, to capture data. And what they're capturing is the images and the metadata, and that's an important term that you need to remember, the metadata associated with those images, because that's the power. So metadata is when it was captured, how it was captured, resolution, location, everything about that image, and that's the most important part that makes this all work. So again, getting all these images, not too difficult. The Google car, looks strange, drives around, makes everybody wonder what's going on, but actually what's happening there is a camera on top spins around very quickly because it does 360. They have a huge hard drive in all these cars, and they have contract people drive around. They map the routes based on population, and always, of course, focusing on the most popular areas. And then they store that data, load it to their cloud, and it's when they load it to their cloud that it takes all that metadata and shoves those pictures then into Google Earth. But the hardest part is the privacy part of this. So the obfuscation, which means you blur out license plates, you blur out people's faces, you make sure that you're not showing anything you shouldn't be showing, and the technologies used to do that is really where the very complex technology is. They use object detection, face recognition, which looks at your face, can identify that that is a person, and every time I see a person, blur it. Same optical character recognition, recognizes if there's letters. More specifically, they have a special type of optical character recognition just for license plates. And this is the technology I used to develop, so that if it sees a license plate, it blacks it out. And then object detection is just knowing if it's a person, if it's a car, if it's an apple, whatever it is. This is all very advanced technology that they develop, and they use all across Google. So not just the Google Maps, but it's very important in the Google Maps technology. Any questions so far on those two, satellite imagery and street level, ground level capture?
Why is it illegal to take pictures of certain locations in the U.S.?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this question with a story, starting off. So,
can you repeat the question?
Oh yeah. So why is it illegal to take satellite images of certain parts of the U.S.? And the most fun one is Area 51, which they have parts of Area 51, but not all of it. I'm trying to remember where this was. So I recently flew to Austin, and when I was flying, I always usually subscribe to the internet service on the plane, because I get my best work done when I'm flying. When you fly from here to Austin, you go over Nevada, Phoenix in Nevada, and somewhere there's one spot where the internet goes out on the plane. And if you start to research it, and it goes out for about half an hour, you find out that in this particular part of the US, no satellite is allowed to do any sort of activity. They can't take photos, they can't send radio signals, so they can't send internet signals. That's why it stops working. And so it's the same thing. There's known blackout areas, but I have tried really hard to figure out what all of them are, and I haven't. And it's very, very hard. And like this one particular case, I researched and tried to figure out why they blocked off this area. I couldn't figure it out. The closest I got was NASA has a special piece of equipment there to communicate with satellite dishes that is a really special radio frequency, which seems strange to me. And so they don't allow any satellites to go there. And the way that works is they feed this data to the satellite dishes themselves. So the satellites know not to record here because they can't collect that data at all. Otherwise they get shut down by the government. So yeah, it's fascinating, and my goal has always been to try to find all those spots. So going to the next major thing. So when you think about all of this imaging technology, and they have a collection of images, all of varying resolutions and sizes and so forth, they do something called image stitching to bring all the images together so that it looks like one coherent image. And when you're in Google Maps, you can tell when this is happening. And actually, if you watch very carefully as you go in and out, you will see the individual images gather together because they gather based on your elevation. So at each elevation is a different image, and at a certain angle, there's different images that are combined together. And so sometimes you'll see real major inconsistencies, like you could hover over the Sierras and see one part of the Sierra here in winter, and the other part suddenly in summer. They've gotten better at this, but their philosophy was better show the image than not, because if they don't show it, you just get a gray square, a grid. And they've gotten better at sequencing time, but previously, when the capture was only happening on very periodic bases, they just put it all together and you can tell. So that's image stitching. It's a relatively simple technology that uses histograms to compare two images together and see where they match up. The other really interesting thing they do, and this is what Google does with all of their products, and most people don't realize, you are the one providing them the data. So you are the ones building the product for them. And that's what I used to always say about Google. If it's free to you, you are the product. And it's really the case when it comes to Google, because all of the data is provided by somebody else, right? They just know how to put it together in a very nice way. That's what crowdsourcing is. So crowdsourcing is using a massive body of people to collect data. And Google Earth does this in a lot of different ways, both on the street level, when you start to actually look at the images themselves, and I'm sure one of the tools that helps Saroo a lot is I could go down to, I'll say Beer Baron, and I'm sure Beer Baron's address shows up on Google Earth, and so one of the bars downtown, I could take a picture inside of it, and I could tell Google, I'll let you put this picture on Google Maps, and now it's on Google Maps. So people can start to recognize inside venues, outside venues, by photographs that people have taken all around the world. So that's one thing they allow you to do. The other thing they do is, if you're familiar with Wikipedia, which is the massive encyclopedia site, they pull data from there. So they can associate Wikipedia articles with places, and they'll pull the images and the data from there. There used to be a product called Google Map Maker, and again, it's one of these things that Google creates and didn't do well enough for them and they drop it. It's no longer exists because some of the functionality they've built directly into Google Maps. But Google Map Maker was a tool where you could personally actually go in and draw buildings and add buildings, and if you were so inclined to build 3D models of structures like this library, you could build a 3D model and tell Google, this is the 3D model of this building. And then they would add it to Google Maps. So we are all doing the work for them.
Chris?
Yeah.
Question, can they pull pictures from Facebook or any other?
No. So it's a really good question. You have to tell them. Now, like all the tech companies these days, sometimes it's easy to make a mistake and not read the terms and conditions, right? But Google doesn't just take photos from your phone. you would have to tell them that you're adding this photo to the map. What they have used in the past is Google+. If anybody's familiar with Google+, historically, it's Google's competitor to Facebook. But they've shut that down. Google+ no longer exists. You can have a profile on Google, but Google+ no longer really exists. So they were capturing images from there. There's this other thing called Captcha, and I really like this one because it's very sneaky. If you're familiar with going to a website and filling out a form and signing up, and then sometimes you get a little box at the bottom that says they want you to prove that you're not a robot. So you type in these words, right, that you see in the image. That's basic Captcha. Maybe some of you have seen the more complex version of this, which is they actually give you the image. In this case, they say, tell me which ones are the street signs. So you go in, you go click, 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 and verify. It says, okay, you're human. What you don't realize is that you are helping program their artificial intelligence to know what a street sign is. So they get a whole bunch of people to do this. And by the way, whatever website you went to that is doing this is paying Google money, most likely, to use this. So that website is using this as a tool to make sure you're not a robot, but Google's using it as a way to collect data and program their systems. So that one's particularly sneaky. Like they'll do road signs and they'll do stoplights and they'll do all sorts of stuff with these. And what they do is if 3 of us in the room take the image and we all do the same clicks, because they'll allow you one wrong, I think, then they incorporate that into their logic. The other thing we see, and this is very new in the last, well, started in 2010, is the 3D layer. So you have aerial layer, you have the ground layer. In the aerial layer, you can go up and down. But you also have the 3D layer, so when you're at the ground, it looks like the building is standing up from the ground. When they first did this in 2010, the way they did this is they took satellite images at 45-degree angles, and they just distorted the image so that it looks like it has height, right? But that's kind of gone away a little bit. Both Apple and Google have started doing both automated skinning. So what they'll do is they'll take that same image as the basis and they'll automatically redraw the building and put the facade back on it so it actually has a full three-dimensional feel. But they also do, for specific cities like San Francisco and specific monuments and so forth, they will actually have somebody manually create a very robust, very detailed 3D models of certain things. Make sure I don't forget this, we'll look at the London Eye. I like that one the best. Because when you look at the London Eye, it's very clear that like it was extremely detailed how they put that together. So the obvious question that comes up with all of this, and I want to point it out and I'll use it as a chance to plug this event, is the issue of privacy. So what if you're standing out in your front yard and the Google car comes by and captures you? Well, they can do that. But they're supposed to obfuscate your face. They put a lot of effort in not including images with people. So in this case, you see an example of where it went wrong, and it grabbed this lady's face, and you can see her face, and it wasn't blurred out. And you can tell them, you can report this, and they'll remove it. You can actually do it for whole properties, but it's a little bit difficult. I think they've kind of taken that way. There were some very large organizations, like an oil and gas company, that was able to convince them to fully obfuscate their entire property. But in any case, they give you a chance to remove that, and they typically respond fairly quickly, and I'll show you how you can do that. But they try not to, and actually the frequency of mistakes like this happening are fairly rare, but guaranteed somebody will find it and it'll end up on the internet and so forth. So yeah, no doubt there's a privacy issue, but at the same time, anymore. People can take out their phones and record you and take photos of you and do whatever you want anyways. It's a hard thing to control. But the other thing that I want to say is that I was talking about metadata. Every photo you take with your cell phone is packed full of data. And I know this is a little hard to see. This is a photo I took of my front yard a few days ago because it just went on the market. And it tells me I did it on an iPhone 7. Here's the resolution. Here's where the photo was taken, and all sorts of. So there's a lot of data that comes with the photos that you take. That's my plug for this. So on March 13th, I'm going to be doing kind of a cybersecurity rundown of safety and some healthy ways to use the internet. So if you're able to join, please do, and I'll talk more about how to protect yourself, not just from this, but from malicious people and hacks. Any questions before we start to dive in? Go ahead.
You mentioned that you could take a picture inside of a restaurant, and then you could give permission to Google. How do you give permission to Google to do that?
So currently, you actually have to go on that location in Google Maps and share that photo, and I'll show you. But if, you can check into places, right? It's not as common as it used to be, but like on Facebook, you can check into places. They don't use Facebook data. There was something called Google Plus, and if you use Google Plus to check in somewhere, you immediately basically give them the right to use that photo. But you have to deliberately do it. It won't just take any photo that, I could see how it can maybe happen accidentally, but probably not. And I'll show you examples. So when we, next thing we're gonna transition, after I show you kind of the future of where things are going, we'll transition to actually looking at the various tools, and there's several that I wanna show you. I'll put these links back up at the end. But it's basically google.com/earth is the web-based version. And then google.com/earth/desktop is what you see on your laptop here. If you have a laptop at home, it's nice to get the desktop version, although it needs to be kind of a newer laptop or desktop because Google Earth Pro takes a lot of resources to run on your computer. Even my brand new laptop here sometimes kind of struggles. And also, if you're going to install it, I would do it sooner rather than later because I don't have confidence it's going to exist much longer, the desktop version. I think they're slowly letting it die. But I want to quickly also just say kind of what's next. What's the next big thing that Google's going to start to do? And I'll load these slides up again. When we're done, one of the things that you've probably heard a lot of is autonomous cars. So the big reason Google is investing in autonomous cars is so they don't have to pay people to drive around and take pictures. They can just have cars go around and do it. So that's a big deal and something that's coming. Better image quality, so the laws have been reduced on it used to be 70 centimeters per pixel, now it's 30, it'll be reduced again, which kind of sounds like bad news, but when you think about the fact that there's ground level capture, it doesn't matter how close the satellites get. Because really, at the ground level, you can't get any closer. So we should be more concerned about what's happening on the ground than what's happening from the air. Indoor maps is coming. So for specific locations like airports and so forth, they already have this, where they actually map the inside of the building. It's mostly for Google Maps, so if you're walking around in the building, they can help you find your way. Augmented reality is coming, so in various forms, goggles, heads-up displays on cars, are all integrated with Google Maps so that you can see projections of buildings and turns and all sorts of stuff right in front of you, or you can walk through an entire city with the goggles and not actually be there, and it'll use data from Google Maps. So that's coming as well. And then that is a link to a blog post that I just think is really interesting. I'll put it up again at the end. It's a blog post that compares Google Maps to Apple Maps. Most of Apple's data comes from the navigation company TomTom. It's probably their only customer at this point in time. And Apple's changing that as well. But seeing the comparison of how far along Google is compared to Apple, due to the sheer amount of data that Google has compared to Apple, is pretty impressive. Any questions before I start playing? That's not good. My internet cut out on me earlier. I think the Wi-Fi here times out after you don't use it for long. Okay,
And it's good to see what he's presenting anyway, so probably good to just.
Oh yeah. Well, the Google Earth, I'm going to show more than just what's installed on the computer, because there's, like I said, this is a division in Google. It's not one product inside Google. It's a big collection of inside the organization. Okay, so I have just the initial page, and it shows you the entire world, Earth, and where'd it go? You can't really see it, but at the very bottom here, at certain levels, it'll actually give you the source of the data. So let me try to resize the screen here, because at this resolution, it's kind of yeah,
Kind of tricky, huh?
yeah. At this resolution, it's a bit tricky. But at the very bottom here, where my cursor is, it actually tells you when it was taken, what satellite provided it, and other data. So they do give credit to the sources sometimes, not always. Depends on the image. So I want to start with the story, because in the story, we heard that he got on a train, he fell asleep, he took the train to a known destination at first. He knew he was going to, I can't pronounce the town names, but he was knowing he was going to this one town, and he thought he was just going to do a round trip back, right? But he ended up not going round trip, he ended up going all the way to the other side of India. If you've ever been to India, you can imagine, it's already hard enough to get around, but there in particular, it's just chaos. And I've been there twice, so I couldn't imagine being lost there. But I want to start with his original location. So I just double-clicked on a saved location here. It's a pin that I placed, because you can once you start doing searches, you can place pins wherever you want. This is the train station he started at. And so what I can do is I can get even closer onto the train station and see here's the station, here's the tracks and the platform, and I can get even closer here, even though this is an example of a particular area where the image quality is not very good. So it means that they haven't gone too deep into the satellite images taken here. But from here, what we can do is kind of a fun little experiment and say, okay, that's where he started. Let's zoom out. And the first destination he knew he was going to is this village. And what I did is I placed a pin here as well. So you can start to see maybe the process he went through to figure out where he's going. So the first destination was really far, or is further south, and then he ended up going all the way east, right, to Calcutta, and he didn't know that. So this was the destination he knew he was going to go to, but he thought he was going to go back up north. But just as a fun experiment, so we went in here, and we knew this is a known destination. He knew he went here. So what we could do, for example, on Google Earth, this is Google Earth Pro, because you can't do this on the web version. I'm going to zoom out. Zooming. There we go. All right, so we have point A and point B. One of the things I can do is actually, for example, estimate distances between areas. So I see that with the ruler here, I see that, okay, that's about 54 kilometers away. So his first trip was about 54 kilometers away. Then from there, he went all the way east. Double click on the spot there. And so we could do the same. And I believe part of the story is the fact that he actually followed the railroad tracks from these destinations. And we can see when we go back into here that we've identified the railroad track, and we see, okay, this is the one that goes north. So I could, if I wanted to, sit here and just follow it and follow it and follow it and see where it goes. Now, if I start to use some of the advanced tools that are built in, because right now I'm just doing the satellite image view, and I've gone up and down, right? I can start to add these other layers over here. And these are different type of data. So we have borders, we have photos, we have roads. I'm going to skip the other ones because they take a lot of data. And so I can go to this train station and I can see, okay, yeah, it's a train station, railway station. Let me zoom out 1 second. So there's some roads. Okay, here we go. So it looks like there's an image here. I can click in the image. Okay, so somebody took that picture and they told Google Earth, here Google Earth, this is where I took this. And Google Earth compiled it and put it up here. So if you're him and you're picturing yourself at this train station and you go here and you go, I remember seeing that in that train station. So I know for sure I was there, I was at least there, right? And you can go other places to do the same thing. So I have to believe that these crowdsourced images were a big part of his discovery. Because they're ad hoc, there are other people capturing them. So I have to believe that that was a huge part of this. So that's kind of a fun exercise, but let's fly over to the library here. See, I have my home on there, and there we are. Okay, so here's the library, town hall, park over here. We see there's a lot of images around here. So what's this one? The arbors. Okay, it's a picture of the apartment building somebody took. This is the person who took it. So sometimes people don't realize what they're, just back to this. If I were a malicious person, I could probably assume that Trisha probably lives here in the arbors. Okay, so Subway restaurant. Let's see, hopefully somebody didn't take a picture of their sandwich. Oh, okay. So, all right, so we're at the library, and there's a lot of photos we see. This tells us there's a park, so that's cool. We know that this is a government building. This means there's food to eat. We see all the roads, because I've turned on all the layers over here. Now, what if I want to see the ground level view? Well, I take this little guy, or gal, and drag him to the street. Anywhere you saw blue there, it means you can put that person there. Cool, now we're on the street. So this is the Google car view of the street in front of the library. And if I click, it'll drive me. And when I've been in a weird mood before, I've driven all around the Livermore for some reason from my house, all around. I don't know why. We don't see really anything interesting in these images here, but I can look around and get a full three-dimensional view and go backwards if I want. So this is when we're looking at the street view here. And I'm gonna actually exit, or I'm gonna do the three-dimensional view. And this is a case where the quality, so I turned down three-dimensional. Doesn't look very good, does it? That's because these three-dimensional images were not created by a person. They were created automatically with the 45-degree angle images and the skinning, and it didn't do a very good job. I'll show you some locations where it does an amazing job. All right, so I'm gonna exit. So we're still at the library. Here's the library. This is again 45 angle degree view. One of my favorite tools in Google Earth Pro and also in Google Maps is, hold on. This gets tricky when you don't have a mouse. No, I'll leave it there. Is the timeline. So I open the timeline here, and the earliest image of the Livermore Library is 1993. And every time you see a block here of blue, it means that the beginning of the blue block is when the photo is taken to the next one. So I'm going to go all the way back to 1993, and we get a black and white image. Now, hold on, I don't think that's correct. Let's see. Yeah.
Still there.
So this is a bug. It shouldn't be there. The reason it's still there, as new as it is today, is because there's a 3D model of the library, and it didn't take it off. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go to my house and then go back. This is an example of how I'm pretty sure that Google Maps Pro is not going to last too much longer because there's a lot of little bugs. Okay, there we go. So it's looking a little bit different. Let's go back to 1993. Still there. All right. Anyways, I'll let it be. So imagine that 3D model isn't there, because it isn't there. The library in this photo doesn't actually exist yet. The apartment buildings don't exist yet. And this is an area where the capture never happened. So that gives you an example also of kind of where things have come. If I go a little bit fast forward, we see that we have an image, but in this image in 2004, the resolution is really bad, which means that sometimes what they do will take very quick, low quality images over a broad area, and Livermore probably wasn't a priority at this time in 2004, so they would take low quality images and higher quality images elsewhere. And then you see that there's still some development that needs to be done. So it's just an example of...
Chris?
Yeah?
What if you uncheck 3D buildings?
Oh,
Can I remove it?
yep, you're right, it will. You're not supposed to outsmart this one. Here we go, finally, thank you. Yeah, so it's gone. So this is really fun. Oh, I like that one. They're doing the construction in this one. So is this the old library? I guess? Yeah, so it was the library, it was the original one. No? This is should be a Wikipedia article, but...
What year?
2002. 2002. So let's go to my house. Fly over to Portola P Street area. I'm gonna go to again. I'm gonna go to when I bought the house. Should generate. There we go. So 2005. Okay, this is nope. I wasn't living here yet. 2005. There we go. All right, so this is my house, 2005, and this one's fun for me because lots changed. And resolution's not great, but you can see there's a massive tree in the backyard. That tree was the bane of my mine and my neighbor's existence for a very long time. It dropped massive branches, it broke fences, broke my skylight, and so forth. Really expensive, and it was sad because it was a really old tree, really expensive to remove, but we just had to because it was causing too much damage. So if you go to today, we're gonna see a much higher resolution in my house, and no more tree. And that's my girls' trampoline and our umbrella and my plants. My house has changed dramatically since then. So I just really like that. It's fun. You can see my neighbor drain their pool at that point in time. It's kind of grainy, not the best photo here. On the web version, it's actually much higher quality. And so now I'm going to jump to the web version, unless there's specific questions about this. It's not only Earth that Google knows a lot about. It knows about skyscapes, which, that's well documented. It knows a lot about Mars and the moon. So I can actually switch to the moon, and we can see the same exact tool, but on the moon. And this is all NASA data that's going to pull up, hopefully. No, I love how it does. So again, it's an example. Look at this is the furthest out view of the moon. And it's very obvious very quickly the places where they have the most data. So you can tell that here it's all kind of general, but here and along this strip, which I assume, I don't know why they have more data here, they have better quality images. Well, let's go to this one. And it'll probably tell us why. Moon landing. That's cool. And so I can actually go in and explore. And there's a sightseeing mode to Google Earth as well, where you can just click through predetermined tours and it'll walk you through it. And it's really fun. But that's also available in the web version. And I want to show you the web version now. Because what happened to my... Oh, sorry. This is really difficult at this resolution to do this. There's like 15 tabs in my browser, and I can only see one. The web-based version of the same thing. Pretty much everything is there, with some limitations like the measuring and the timeline and so forth. But here, same story. I can launch Google Earth, and it'll load up, and it's a nicer interface as well. Let me close this and give ourselves a little bit more space. So I went through and I bookmarked a few interesting locations here on this version. I'm going to do my house again so you can see the difference in the quality of image. So this is the web version. So it's at google.com/earth. So you can see immediately that the web-based version of this has better images than the desktop version, just by what I just showed you with my house. It's already a better quality image. So that's interesting. It also has better 3D models. So if I zoom in on my house here, I actually have a pretty decent quality automatic generated 3D model of my house. See my sunroom, see my garbage containers, that's my car. So just to give you an example of why I think that Google is letting Google Earth Desktop kind of go by the wayside a little bit. I can do all the same things here. I can drag myself on my street. And now I have a street view of all my neighbors and so forth. This is probably taken sometime in the summer. I know I was the only one who had a green lawn in my neighborhood. See our plants and so forth. If I click right here, oh, that's just the licensing. Shoot. How do I cycle through these tabs? Previous Okay, so this is what I wanted to show. So this is street view of my house, and this is a recent image. If you look, you can actually see here it says when it was taken, and just like on Google Earth, I can go back in time, not as far, to 2008. So you can tell we recently painted our house, and that's what it looked like at that time. And those bushes didn't exist. It's a lot of fun to do this on your own house. It's kind of nostalgic. This is where I can report something I don't want. So let's say there was a photo of my girls in the front yard. I don't want my girls in this. What I would do is there's this little button over here. You have to do it on the street view. It has to be on the street view. And I go report a problem. And there's a whole form, and you can say, is it a face, is it a car? And then you can report that to them. So I can go down the street, I can go down my street this way. I'm going to see, oops, if I can't. No, I want to be on the street. Okay, let me go here. I want to see if I can't find a car. There's a car. Okay, street view, that car's, oh, there's a car. There we go. Resolution's not high enough. I was trying to see if I could find the license plate, so you could see that they block it out. If I were to go down Portola, there's a lot. I've done that. Oh, perfect. So see, this is blurred out. And that's all done automatically. And it's funny, because this right here is the back of the Google car. And they blurred this out. This is all the trunk of the Google car. So this it gets really addicting really fast to go around, and you can see the time the images were taken and everything.
So with the web-based program, do they need to download, install a program?
No,
It's all
web-based.
Just go to the website and then start.
You'll need to make sure your browser is up to date. If you have an older version of Chrome or Internet Explorer, it won't work. But you just go to google.com/earth and you have it. That's it. Okay. It's 8 o'clock. I have more to show. So just want to be cautious of everybody's time if you're okay showing a few more things. I won't be able to go into the detail I wanted to, but I do want to show you a few more things. So they have a lot. Sometimes they'll do special capture for special events. So this was Day of the Dead in Mexico. Let's see, 2018, I guess. And another thing, like the license plate I want to show you, this is a full three-dimensional. So they actually went to the event, they set up a camera, and they're recording this, right? But you'll notice that they blur out people's faces. Most of it is automated, but some of it probably manually done. So sometimes what they capture is very deliberate, and they go through. And there's a lot of these different types of tours that you can see. So this is all Day of the Dead. It looks like this is all in the area, all in Mexico. This is frustrating. Let's go back. The other thing that they've made is really cool, and they're all the same technology. All of these are using the same technology. Is the Project Sunroof. So what this is they are helping people estimate what sort of wattage they would get if they installed a sunroof on their house. So the way this works is it's all the same images, but they project the sun during the day. So they know how your house is facing. They know three-dimensionally where your roof is facing, so where you could actually put a sunroof, and then they estimate how much usable sunlight you have for a sunroof. So if you were considering doing a sunroof, you could go, so again, there's my house and my car, and everything on my street is not showing up as having very much usable light. But if you look at these houses, they have a lot of opportunity to set up solar panels, and you can estimate your savings, you can estimate the wattage you'll generate, and all sorts of cool stuff from that. So that is the Project Sunroof. And I think, oops, there was one more thing I wanted to show you. Which is the indoor maps. So we talked about that. So they're starting to map inside large buildings. Again, this is all in the web browser, and it's also a mobile app. So if you have an iOS or an Android, you can download the Google Earth or the Google Maps app, and you'll have all of this same stuff as well. There's a little bit more you can do in the browser than you can do on the web. But one of the things I promised you was the London Eye. Is to take a closer look at the 3D models that they've created. So in some cases, the 3D models we saw were created automatically, the quality wasn't great. But in some cases, the 3D models, the quality is amazing because they were done manually. I've lost internet again. Nope, maybe not. Yep, definitely lost internet. Oh, there we go. So it's downloading and it's not doing it justice. Actually, the screen doesn't do it justice at all. But this is really, really Coca-Cola. Wow. This is a really, really cool example of the 3D modeling. And this is the London Eye. If you've ever been on the London Eye, it's really fun. And all of these buildings out here, somebody actually went and created these 3D models. Manually, yeah. So there's two different types of 3D models. There's the ones where the satellite images come at a 45-degree angle and the software approximates. And they skin it based on the image color. Like we saw over here. Over here there's a blue house. And it went at an angle and it didn't do a very good job. These are somebody's using a product that Google created called Captcha, which is a 3D modeling tool that they make available for free. And they created this. And they went in and did all these buildings and placed them. And they're really cool. And you can see here, like I can go in and get a whole bunch of details, all from Wikipedia about this. The aquarium. So this is in highly populated areas and things like Stonehenge. We saw earlier in my slides there was a person with the trekker, no, it was the bike, going around Stonehenge. So there's certain areas where they've done very interesting things. And then finally, I wanted to show you, because I could do this all day long, and you can really get lost in this. There's a lot of really interesting places you can find. This is in Nevada. It is just a massive field of retired military planes. And they actually have 3D models of them, which is really cool. Like when I get close to the plane, you can see it looks three-dimensional. That one's broken. And let's see, this one, if you just Google the web for interesting Google Earth locations, you can find all sorts of stuff. This one is shrouded in mystery because it looks like there's like a circle and some sort of three-dimensional structure created. And actually, people have visited this site and tried to figure out where it was and when it came from. Here's an example of somebody creating in Brazil, or Argentina, I guess, a guitar in the ground with plants. And what's interesting about this photo, if you remember what I said earlier, that sometimes images are stitched via different time frames, you can very clearly see that in this case, because this is one field. Green, not green, it's the same field. So there's a lot of really cool stuff like that. If you just Google sightseeing, Google Maps, or Google, or I mean, you'll find articles that have 50 interesting locations like this, and you can just click on it, and it'll take you there. So this is all the web-based version, and frankly, although the desktop version is very cool for the going forward in time and backward in time, you probably can get the most from the desktop version here. Oh, also this is really fun. You can roll the dice, and you roll the dice, and it'll just take you somewhere randomly, and it'll tell you about it. Colombia. To Colombia here. And the internet here is a little slow, so it doesn't generate the resolution or generate the images very quickly, but it's all very cool. So anyways, I could go on forever, but I really appreciate everyone taking their time. I hope that it was fun and you saw some cool stuff, and maybe on the